Well, hello there. Welcome to the Pruskop Podcast. My name is Megan Prusko, and I'm a realtor here in Edmonton, Alberta. I love talking about all things entrepreneurship and investment. Today, we are talking to Sunni, who is a local wholesaler here, and we talk about the process of how wholesaling works, where to look, how the deals function, and what it looks like to be a wholesaler in contrast to a realtor. Often people think that wholesalers and realtors work against each other, but we're actually really good friends and help each other through these transactions. I hope you enjoy the conversation just as much as I did. Well, hello, Sunni. Welcome to the Pruskop Podcast.
Hello, Megan. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing today? Good?
Good. Yeah. I mean, there's snow outside, but the sun somehow will shine through at some point today, hopefully.
It has to.
How's your day going?
Good so far. I wanted to start off a little bit about how we met. So you're a wholesaler. So we run in the same circle, real estate in Edmonton, investors in Edmonton. And I don't know how you remember it, but when I first met you, we were at a women's investor networking event, my first time going to one of those. And everybody there was dressed super fancy and nice. And I walked in wearing my work boots and work shorts and a baseball cap and a shirt covered in paint. I was so insecure. But then you and I started talking, and I was like, whoa, this woman is incredible. I think you mentioned you just closed on $1 million deal at that time. And that just blew me away that you were that far along in your career at obviously so young. And I was like, whoa. So I don't know if I ever actually told you this, but meeting you and conversation I've had with you has actually been such a boost for my confidence. Like, if she can do it, I can do it. And just thank you for being a part of my life and inspiring me at the end of the day.
I had no idea. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing. Well, I'm happy that I was able to ease your nerves a little bit with moving into something which probably, yeah, it definitely seems a little bit scary, but it's when you move through fear that you really get to learn a little bit more about who you are and what you have to offer as well.
Yeah. I'll never forget that. That was just amazing. So I do want to dive in. How did you become a wholesaler?
Um, I didn't start off with wholesaling. I started off with buying my first property, and I didn't think much of it because it was going to be my primary residence, but I ended up fixing it up. It was like a 1990 style place, and got the flooring done, did a paint job, did some fixtures, light touch-up work, really.
Mhm.
And then I looked at the properties in the area. I was like, oh wow, the value went up quite a bit from when I purchased it to what other places are selling for in this area. So I threw it on the market myself, and I used a third party called Honest Store to put it up. And within 2 weeks, I sold it and got a way higher offer than I ever thought that I would. And after that, I was hooked to real estate. So initially, I wanted to continue doing flips for other people, but after looking at like how much work went into it, I decided to start looking at other avenues and actually went to a multifamily investing group at one point, and I ran into some people who told me that if I was able to find them a property, they would give me $30,000. And at that time, I was like, so you're telling me I would be able to go and find you a property, and all I have to do is talk to the people and hand it over to you, and you'd give me the same amount that I would get as the entire flip of a project? So from there, I was like, okay, what is this called? So I ended up meeting someone else at that event, and that's what they did full time, is wholesaling. And at that time, it was like a completely foreign concept to me. So for the next couple months, I just dove in and I learned everything I could possibly learn about it and started working with a wholesaler, doing the contract side of things, doing the back end, and figuring out what it really took. And then I ended up seeing a for sale sign on a multifamily property. So I decided to call it. I met with the seller and I got it under contract. And from there, I started wholesaling and loved it. I was addicted to it because it's not that much work, and it's more about being able to understand the person's needs rather than
Mm.
the property itself. I would say it's real estate, in my opinion, is like mainly psychology and understanding because on the investment side of things, it's a little bit different, but you're really having to deal with the people side of things for when you're purchasing, and then the investment and number side when you're selling. So you have to be good at both sides, I would say, in order to be an agent or wholesaler, kind of like bridging that gap in the middle.
Yeah, and I think with wholesalers as well, like you're typically dealing with people that are in a pinch, right? Like you're not typically transacting on like brand new homes or homes that are in really good condition. You're dealing with people who typically will leave their home run down a little bit, and for whatever reason, they need to sell because they need to get that equity out. So not only are you transacting hundreds of thousands of dollars like we do as realtors, but you're doing it where the stakes are even higher and the time is even more crunched. So, yeah, it's like on steroids almost.
Yeah, that, for example, that first property that I went to, it was completely boarded up and fire damaged. And when I went to go tour inside of it, there was a fire that started in the basement. So we had to go with a fire extinguisher and put it
While you
out
were there?
while we were in the building. So it's definitely not your ideal type of house that you're wanting to go into. It would mainly be damaged properties that the sellers honestly don't even want to touch. And often realtors will even say like, look, I only deal with nice properties. Like I don't even want to do that kind of a property, have that on my name or anything like that. So then we come in, pick them up and work with the right type of investors who want to purchase those properties, and we kind of solve a couple problems at the same time. So I think that's kind of where the niche of wholesaling falls into play.
We talk about all the time in our job putting out fires, but you literally put out a fire. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
For those people listening that don't understand what wholesaling is, and I didn't for a long time, it was like this really obscure, I know that they transact, but how on a very high level, how does wholesaling work?
High level. Okay, let me see. One piece of paper. This is actually printer information, but we're going to pretend it's a purchase contract. I
Okay.
have one purchase contract where I'm purchasing the property from the seller, and then I go and I take another purchase contract, and then I'm the seller on it, and I sell it over to the new investor buyer.
So you're a middleman. You act as both the buyer and the seller, but you're not actually the one coughing up the funds at any point. So
No.
you're a networker. That's what your job is to find those two people and make it happen. I think
Hmm.
something that's also important with wholesaling is you don't actually sell properties, you sell contracts, right?
Hmm.
So let's say I need to sell my house quick for cash. I need to get my equity out of it. And you offer me $300,000 for my house, let's say. Then how do you get paid? How does that work?
Let's say you want to sell it for 300,000. I would go to my investor and evaluate it and see if it's a property that actually makes sense for them as well. And if it's in the right neighborhood and it's the right type of size of property, then I'll go and I'll typically it's around 5%. So I would put on 5% on the property and I'll be like, here, investor, here's the property for 315,000.
Okay,
And
and then that 15K is yours once it sells.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So it's that difference of what you're able to get it for versus what you're wanting to sell it for.
So you have one contract with me, the seller, saying $300,000, and then you have a second contract with the buyer for $315,000.
Yes.
So on possession day, are you ever on title?
Yep.
So you are on title. Explain that. How does that work?
At land registries, I get put on title for about 10 minutes while the lawyer transacts it.
Mhm.
So the new investor buyer pays for the property, uses those funds to close on the property. I get put onto title, and then the title get transferred to the new buyer.
That's a lot happening very, very quick.
Yeah, so
Are you ever caught in a sticky situation where you thought you had a buyer, but then it turns out they can't move forward with it, but then you have this contract that you're obligated to fulfill?
So essentially, the way to not have that happen is you have to make sure that the new purchaser puts down a deposit, which ensures that they're not going to back out of the contract. There is a little bit of an easier way to do it, and it's a lot more transparent, which is the way that I honestly prefer. And what I've been doing recently is where I assign the contract over. So I'll get the contract, and then you just add an assignment contract on top of that, and then
Mm.
you send it over to the new buyer. So whatever you had written with the seller gets transferred over to the new buyer, and then from there you're out. The new buyer sends over the assignment payment of, let's say, 5% to the lawyer, and that gets held until the transaction's closed.
Yeah, that's pretty nifty. I had to get wholesaling explained to me like 6 times before it clicked because I'm like, I know that it works, but I don't know how. So that's really cool for you to get into that industry super early and just kicking it. Because how much was your first transaction that you did, that apartment building with the fire?
That one was a $600,000 property.
Yeah. Whoa. So for your like anybody in real estate for your first transaction to be 600,000, whether you're a buyer, seller, or a realtor or a wholesaler, like that's a pretty big deal. Good for you. How do you typically find these properties that are your, do you call them listings or what do you call them?
I just call them properties.
Just
If I
properties?
have any properties for sale at the moment, that's what people usually ask. Yeah.
Okay. And then how do
Um,
you find those?
a lot of them are going around and just talking to people. A lot of them are people having them for sale. And a lot of it, I would say, is from social media. So running a lot of different ads that I have and from my website as well. And then people see what I do and I explain it to them and they're like, oh, I actually have someone who has something similar, or oh, there's this situation come up. So it's a lot about talking and explaining what I do, and I would say I'm pretty established in the industry that I'm in right now. So a lot of people do call me with different scenarios or situations as well. So
Mhm.
then when that happens, I'm able to work with them and help them out to find a buyer to close on the property that they have.
What do you do to ensure that you're being transparent and to gain people's trust?
The biggest thing that I find is actually understanding the people's needs of what they need and what they want. So, for example, there's this one house that I started engaging with in February of 2024, and
Mhm.
our deal didn't end up closing till November. And throughout that point, I think I would go there almost every single month just to check in on them, see what they're wanting. And they gave me a price for their property that they wanted, and I agreed on it. And I actually told them, I was like, look, I'd like to give you 5,000 more for your place. You guys have been so compatible and so like caring, and I would really like to just help you guys out a little bit more because they were in a bit of a tight situation and they refused. They wouldn't let me give them more on their
Really?
property. So
Wow.
that scenario, they were sick. They didn't have anywhere to go. The guy was in a wheelchair for 6 years and wasn't able to get out of his house. So me going and speaking with them was like a blessing in disguise to them. Like I ended up also finding someone to purchase their car as well because they had no way of posting it on Facebook or posting it on Kijiji or anything like that. And they also had nowhere to go out to live. So I would go and I FaceTime them a couple times from a few different apartments and new properties for them to move into. So I kind of helped them along from like
Wow.
start to finish. So I've done that with quite a few different people. Like I would go and find rental properties for them, get a U-Haul. Like I've moved people out of their places multiple times. So I would say I'm honestly like so transparent. I'm like, look, I'm gonna buy your place, but it's gonna be my partner who's closing on it because they're the ones with the money. And everyone's super happy with that.
That's amazing. So you a couple times you've actually like A to complete Z well above and beyond what you need to do in order to get paid. You're just honestly trying to help people.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
I think that's what's missing is people actually caring because they're not gonna just be like, "Yep, I'm ready to sell my place." Like they're not ready for that. They're sitting there with absolutely nowhere to go, nothing to do to help them out. Like they actually need help, and I think that's where I find that I'm really able to go in and provide a solution for everyone. And the purchaser on that property was super happy. They looked at the property. I was like, "Yep, this is what I got the property for. Like, what do you want to pay on top of that?" And they're like, "Yep, I'll give you 5% and quick assignment," and everyone was happy. I was super fulfilled in that transaction because all along the way, everyone was so happy with how it went.
Oh, that's the best. What just it's a like a triple or quadruple win, and it sounds like that's exactly what you do as well.
Hmm.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. What are some common misconceptions that people have about wholesalers? Have you heard of any?
I would say that a lot of people say that wholesalers are there to rip you off, but I think that wholesalers aren't a solution for everyone. It's not like you want to go and it's like, let's say you want to go and trade your car in, for example, and you're like, honestly, like, I'm pretty much done with it. There's like some damage to it. I don't want to fix it. That's kind of like how a wholesaler would come in and pick up your property if it was in a similar condition to a car in comparison. So it's when people don't really like care to take care of it or fix it up or go the extra mile to actually do the changes that are needed to bring up the value. Whereas a lot of people, they want to get the highest amount for their car, they would go and touch it up and vacuum it out and clean it up. So that's kind of where the misconception is, because those types of people who will take care of their car and want the highest amount, they're not going to want to sell their car to someone who's going to pay a little bit less of a price for it. It's the same thing with a house.
Mhm.
So it's mainly if you really like don't care too much about finding a perfect price for it, essentially.
Yeah, I was talking to another wholesaler and she said something where she said, like, same thing as you. Some people don't like that we offer low prices, but at the end of the day, I'm here to solve a problem. I'm not your first option, I'm your last option, and nobody else is showing up here to save you. But here I am, and I can help you through this situation.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you do is just help people out of these sticky situations that they're in. Some I want to talk about is how we collaborate, like realtors and wholesalers. A lot of people think it's like realtors versus wholesalers and we don't like each other, but we actually work together very well. We actually had a deal together. We talked about Frank. So Frank had a duplex on the north side of Edmonton here. Sunny, I don't know where you found Frank, but I'm so glad that you did. Yeah, Frankie had this duplex. Sunny had the property under contract. And then I found a buyer for it once she let our team know about the property being available. And then I was able to find a buyer. I actually had to find three buyers. It fell through twice. But finally it went through and everybody's happy now. And then you and I got to split the commission for it.
That I honestly love that scenario. I'll go out, find the property, and then work with the realtor that's the most specialized because I know you have a lot of buyers for multifamily because that's what you specialize in. So I was like, oh, Megan, perfect. Here's a property. If you have someone for it, that'll save me a lot of time and a lot of headache. And I know you can figure out a solution for this.
I
So
had three people for it.
people were not ready. You came too fast with the deal.
I was so glad that you found Frank. He's such a character. I think the first time I met him, he's an older guy. The first time I met him, it was like 9 in the morning or something, and he wanted to be the one to let people in personally. So I said, thank you for coming here so early to let us in. He's like, well, don't ever ask me to do it again. And I was like, oh, he's a grumpy old man. But then as I got to talk to him, like we had such long, wonderful talks together, and we just adore each other now, and we give each other hugs and the people you meet in real estate is just wild.
I think that's what makes it enjoyable. If it was
Mhm.
just houses, I'd be so bored, but it's actually you meet so many amazing people in the process that you can never really get bored if you actually are there to listen.
No, I think you have to be, if you're in real estate, whatever career, you can't just be in it for the money. And you also can't just be in it for the people because both of those independently will break you. Like you have to be able to blend those two together and thoroughly enjoy both parts of the process as well. So, as a realtor, we have a lot of ethical and liabilities and fiduciary duties and all of that. And we have many, many codes that we have to abide by. And we also have insurance as realtors as well. So, do you have any legal or ethical differences compared to me?
Um, I have it working as a business. So I have a corporation that I do my wholesaling under,
Mhm.
and I'm have as many rights as any normal human who's not a realtor. So I'm able to go and speak with people and openly discuss, and I don't have to say, oh, like I'm gonna be selling your property off for this or that. So I don't have insurance, but I also don't have as much liability in that. In for instance, as an example, you wouldn't be allowed to go purposefully knock on an expired listing.
Mhm.
Whereas I'm able to go do that, and I've done a transaction that way as well. So I saw a property that was expired. I went to the lady. I was like, "Look, I have someone to buy your place." And she was like, "Okay," and did a deal like that.
And I think you can also we call them like pocket listings as realtors where you don't
Mhm.
post them on MLS, which you don't either. But I know I've tried to post a pocket listing when I first started and I got in trouble for that. You can't do that as a realtor. If you post something on social media or publicly, but it's not listed on the MLS within 48 hours, you can get a fine for it. So I got a warning because I was like, oh, I think it was one of your properties actually that I posted. I was like, hey, look at Sunny's property she has. Isn't this cool? And someone ratted on me and I got a slap on the wrist for it. So you can really leverage your social media a lot. And something else you can do is you can filter out a lot of the buyers, right? Because whoever has your contact card has kind of been filtered out already and is in that realm versus when you post on MLS, you get a lot of tire kickers that just want to snoop around and ask questions, but they're not actually serious. The people that you work with as buyers, they're all cash buyers and they know what they want and they're ready to move if it looks good.
Mhm. Yeah, I like to pre-vet my buyers before I engage. And honestly, on the investment side of things, it's pretty simple for the most part. It's like, what is the size of the property? What can I do with the property? Okay, I'm gonna go and buy it. So I would say my main, honestly, like pretty much everyone I work with right now is a developer. So I go and I'll find a property that's they're purchasing for lot value. So it's like, okay, what is the actual land worth? What is the
Mm-hmm.
size? Am I able to build X amount of units on it? Yes or no? They purchase or they don't purchase if the price is right for them.
Yeah, lots are going crazy right now. Like as soon as people get a whiff of a lot, they're like, "Oh, it's off the table now. Someone just bought it." Like especially in the West End, those
Mhm.
50 by 150 lots are just gone. They it's like they were never even there. They just disappear.
I have one right now if you're looking.
Oh, okay. Well, you
We'll
have to
have to
send that
talk
to me.
after.
Yes. How do you decide on the price of these properties that you're selling
For purchasing or for selling?
for, I guess, purchasing and selling? So, like if I come to you with a property that I want to sell, how do you determine what you're able to give me as the seller? And then how do you determine what it would be worth to a buyer?
Mhm. I usually ask the seller what they're wanting for their property, and then I'll be within 5% of that price.
Mhm.
And if they're wanting a little bit too much for their property, I'm not going to purchase it, and I'm going to tell them other ways, or I'm going to refer them to a realtor who can get them that price that they're looking for. Just because I don't want to put someone in a situation where they're not happy with the decision that they made. And I'm not here to go and buy a nice house. I'm here to buy a tear down lot. I'm here to buy the ones with mold in the basement, with asbestos all over, where they're almost inhabitable. And that's kind of where I stand. And at that point, the seller's looking at it. They're like, I don't think my house is worth really that much. So then I go and I say, okay, what do you want for it? And I'll either take it or I'll tell them I can't work with that. And we'll have to decide on a price. And for the most part, their first price, I take it and run with it.
So if it is a case where the seller wants, a premium on their house, how do you know that they're asking for too much? What do you compare it against?
I go and I base it off on sold properties in the area, just like you would if you
Just
were a
like me.
realtor. So I have a pretty good understanding of which areas are worth what prices, just because I've been doing a lot of digging and research, and I've also got a couple properties under contract where I was like, actually, you want too much for your property, and I'll let them know a couple days later, I'm not going to be your purchaser for it.
Because what if they are looking for market value price?
Then I'll tell them to put it on the market.
Yep. I guess that's a simple solution, isn't it?
Yeah,
Call Megan, she can help you.
exactly.
Are there specific areas that you're looking at right now?
Yeah, I would say I pretty much only focus on the West End and like not downtown, like the central Edmonton, like South Central, like Park Ellen, Allendale, Ritchie, those kind of areas. That's where everyone wants to buy, so I go there.
And that's just you physically knocking on doors, talking to people.
It would be like I go and I sort through the properties that I want to go to, so I have them targeted beforehand.
Do
And
you like go through Google Maps and like just virtually go through and see what lots you think might be of interest to you, or like how do you narrow down what street to start on?
Um, it's a lot of like driving around and seeing what type of properties are in that area and seeing the sizes of the property as well. And then from there, I'll start having conversations with people when I'm out and about. Like I'll almost anytime I'm in an area and I see people walking around, I'll be like, "Oh, like I'm looking for a property in the area. Do you know anyone who's like looking to sell?" It's pretty much as simple as that. And I often get referred to like different areas or different places, but also mainly through social media and through network of people bringing properties. I would say that's where most of them come from.
Have you had a deal go sideways where you didn't walk away happy?
It was on one property. I did have a scenario where I removed conditions on the property and the purchaser that I had did back out on the property and they didn't end up actually putting in the deposit. So I don't
Mm.
know if it was my fault for not double checking or if it was something to do with either side on the lawyer side of things, but the deposit wasn't brought in. So the purchaser pretty much walked away happy with um, no real repercussions, whereas my deposit was in and I had the deal kind of fall through in front of my hands. I ended up posting about the property. This is kind of a little, I would say, a little bit of an interesting scenario. So I posted about the property, and someone in my network went to that property and got it under contract himself. So that's why it fell through. So I lost my deposit on it, and he had another buyer, so that's why he wanted the property. And I really wish he would have just told me about that because then we could have worked together. And I had the property for a better price than he did. So I don't know why that happened, but I guess that just comes to show that you can't 100% trust every single person that you interact with. Even if you think that they're a good person, you have to be a little bit more careful with what you share as well. So I would say it was a good learning opportunity for me to be a little bit more selective about what I share.
Yeah. Has there been any other challenges that you think, as specifically a wholesaler, you have to work through that you don't think other either realtors or just the real estate realm of careers have to deal with?
Um, I think a little bit of a challenge that I have is when I go to some sellers, they are curious why a young female is there by themselves wanting to purchase a property.
Mm.
So that does come up sometimes. For the most part, I'm able to share with them kind of my track record, and then they have a little bit more ease, but it's that initial, I guess, like image that they might perceive as not gonna actually fulfill what I say I'm gonna fulfill.
So how do you win them over?
I share with them what I've done, and I'm super transparent with them exactly what I'm doing. So it's
Mhm.
not needing to win them over, more is like, yeah, if this is something that works for you, perfect. If not, then look elsewhere, I guess.
Or I guess I couldn't be a wholesaler because I'm licensed, but if somebody was looking to become a wholesaler, where would you recommend they start and what would you warn or advise them about?
They need to have the right type of lawyer in order to be able to do double closes and have the right type of contracts. And I would not recommend that they get properties under contract if they're not in the right neighborhoods and the right type of properties that investors would be looking for. So almost you have to think of yourself as an investor. What would I be looking for? And be around those groups of people who are looking for those properties, so then you're able to have a buyer for them.
Hmm. You mentioned the right kind of lawyer. What kind of lawyer should people look for?
Well, some lawyers don't understand what double closing is or what
Mm.
wholesaling is, so you have to almost interview your lawyer just to make sure that they're able to fulfill what you need.
I think that's actually all of my questions for you. So, if people are interested in these lots that you have lined up in the West End, everybody's hot for lots. How can they reach you?
I would say the easiest would be either on Instagram or Facebook at Sunni Yaremchuk, SUNNIYAREMCHUK.
Perfect. I'll plug that in there so they can see your
Perfect.
beautiful face and then they can reach out to you as well.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Megan.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a little bit of a quick episode, but I just feel like we could go into so much detail and then we would never escape this podcast because
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts. But at the end, it is a people game. All of real estate is, and then also mixing it as an investor.
100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much for having me, Megan.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again to Sunny for joining me on this episode. It is always a pleasure to speak to her. And I'm really glad that we went through wholesaling and how it works because a lot of people don't quite understand selling contracts, not houses. Wild, but that's how it works. If you're looking to reach out to Sunny personally, you can do so through the link in the description below. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye for now.